Welcome back, everyone. We're going to be doing another camera comparison today between the newly kind of released iPhone SE 2, it's been out for a minute now, versus the iPhone 7 Plus. Now, I've already done the 8 Plus, I've done literally every single iPhone comparison between the SE 2, except the 7 Plus's camera comparison. I don't think I did speed tests between them either. But the SE2, pretty much is the latest and greatest when it comes down to the, chipset inside. But the camera sensor really is kind of just the same recycled one from the iPhone 8, which is really impressive. That Apple was able to go and resell this phone, even though branded kind of as a new phone when it's still using a lot of the same internals. Now, with the iPhone 7 Plus, this is really interesting because it was the first iPhone to bring a dual camera setup. And that's a really, a somewhat important thing to keep in mind because with the iPhone 7 Plus, we have that additional telephoto lens, which the iPhone SE 2 does not have and it will never get because it can't get it. It's a hardware thing. And when it comes down to that, the 7 Plus already kind of has an edge, so kind of keep that in mind. But again, just because you have more camera sensors doesn't mean the camera is automatically better. And in a lot of ways, I compared even a couple years ago the S7 Plus versus the 10Rs camera, and I saw the same thing, man. The 10Rs camera was much better in my opinion, even though the 7 Plus had that additional camera sensor, and I'm pretty sure it's going to be the same exact case here. On the SE2, we have a single 12 megapixel camera lens. On the 7 Plus, we have a dual 12 megapixel camera lens. On the 7 Plus, we can do 4K at 30. The SE2, we can do 4K at 60, so kind of keep that in mind. Now, I'll go ahead and show you these photos, but to keep in mind, I took these photos the exact same time at the exact same location, all that stuff, probably seconds within each other. Another big thing to keep in mind, I let these phones autofocus. I didn't tap to focus on any of these photos, so that's another huge important thing to keep in mind. So looking at this first photo, you can already see now the 7 Plus will be on the left, the SE2 will be on the right. If you look in the bottom corners, it'll pretty much tell you which one's which. Now, even just straight from the go of me looking at this first photo, I can already kind of see that the 7 Plus photo looks a little bit dark and a little bit kind of more dull than the SE2's photo, but this is just the first one, so it's really not that big of a deal. Now, if I look on something like this, what I like is looking at the edge of these specific photos, and if you go ahead and do that, you can kind of see that interestingly enough, this is super interesting. If you look on the SE2's photo, look at how much like noise is going on in this photo, and how much I guess blurriness is going on versus the 7 Plus. So look how much more smooth this photo looks. That's a super impressive thing that I didn't even realize on the 7 Plus. And in my opinion, I would rather have this going on than this. This seems to be a lot of, blurriness. Now, if we kind of look into something like this area, if we can kind of, zoom in here, you can kind of see that, they kind of, there's two different colors going on here. This looks much more in focus. You can see much more detail here, where the 7 Plus just looks completely out of focus. It doesn't even look like the same photo. So when it comes down to this, what I can tell you is, I don't really think one like blows the other one out of the water, but it's very interesting that to me, it kind of seems like the SE2 was focusing on here and blurring out the rest of the background, where the 7 Plus was just kind of focusing in on everywhere. Maybe it was even focusing on here, and maybe it was blurring out here, but you can tell between these two, the quality of this indoor photo is far superior on the SE2 than on the 7 Plus. Even though there was a lot more noise going on here, I still think the 7 Plus didn't really quite keep up with the SE2. Now, this next photo is another interesting one, indoor photo. It shows the desk that I make all my videos on, and you can kind of see the color scheme that's going on. Now, if I go and zoom into this specific, area, you can kind of see, I don't really see too many differences. If I go and zoom in like to this specific area, they look like almost identically the same photos. The colors look the same too, which is really interesting. The desk looks about the same too. If I go and look at this area, yeah, they look about the same. If I look at the edge of the desk, let's see if there's some craziness going on. And, maybe there seems to be a little bit more sharpening going on for the SE2 photo. On the 7 Plus, it looks pretty much, kind of okay, but it looks a little bit more, washed out a little bit. So I think between both, I don't really know which one is the crazy bigger one. Even if you look at the little edge, if you look at this thing right here, it seems to me that it looks a little bit more blurry on the SE2 than on the 7 Plus. And that's something you want to see. You want this photo to be in focus, and you want the rest to be out of focus. So between both, I'm not really too sure which one won, maybe the SE2. And this is another photo of the camera lens, and even just from me looking at it from this specific angle, I like how the SE2 shows like more punchy colors. The desk, it looks a little bit more brown, and I think this is more accurate than how this one looks a little bit more washed out. If I go and zoom into the camera lens itself, you might be able to see some differences between them. Probably not. One thing I love doing though is zooming into a specific, text in this lens. So if you look right here, and if you look right here, you can kind of get a sense of how much more washed out and how much I guess like bluish this kind of color looks on the 7 Plus. Whereas on the SE2, it looks so much more in focus, and on top of that, it looks, actually how it looks in real life, a lot more black and a lot of text that's white and a lot of popping colors, which is really cool. And like I stated before, that's probably one of the main things I look at. When I'm looking at these things, I like looking at the text because it kind of showcases, what these cameras and what type of data and information these cameras are able to keep in. And definitely when it comes down to it, the SE2 definitely won here for sure. Now this next photo is just of some grass, and even from here you can kind of tell that the 7 Plus's photo looks a little bit washed out. The SE2 did a really good job at keeping everything kind of in focus, and even with the background right here, that was one of the first things I noticed. The 7 Plus photo looks way more darkened, way more washed out. The SE2 really popped those colors out, which is really awesome. If I go and zoom into like this specific area right here, again, you can kind of get a sense of, which one looks a little bit better. Around this area, they look almost the same, but definitely in kind of this little, worse lighting conditions, this SE2 definitely went here for sure. Now this next photo is just standard ukulele, and even from here you can kind of see, the SE2 loves to kind of, showcase and brighten these colors up, which is something that I love seeing, and I love seeing these colors kind of brighten up and all that. I mean, that's something that's really, really cool. The 7 Plus photo really doesn't even look that bad, but when it comes down to it, looking at a color like this really pops out a little bit more, which is really cool. If I go and zoom into here, you can kind of get an idea. I think you're getting a lot more grain in the wood on the SE2 than on the 7 Plus. If I go and zoom in up here, maybe there's really not too many crazy differences, but even here you can kind of see this one looks a little bit more washed out. Nothing too crazy. But on the SE2, it looks like it's a little bit more in focus here, which is really cool. So in terms of this photo, I'd probably end up siding with the SE2 as well. We finally get to an outdoor photo, and one thing that I was seeing on the SE2, it looked like it kind of over brightened in some cases, especially if you're in direct sunlight, but it looks like the 7 Plus did an even worse job at that. So if I go and zoom into this leaf right here, you can kind of see, like if I go and zoom into this specific edge, you can kind of see that they honestly look almost like the exact same photo, to be honest. Maybe the SE2's looks a little bit more sharper, but the background, even if you look at right here, there seems to be a lot more noise going around on the background, the blurriness going on, which is really interesting. If I go and look into like this specific edge right here, maybe we're able to see some type of differences as well. And I think the 7 Plus just kind of over brightened the photo, as you guys can see. It seems to be a lot more brightening going on. Versus the SE2, it looks a lot more, more in focus and looks a lot more, I guess, evened out a little bit. I think that's the best way I could put it. So in terms of this photo, I'd probably end up siding with the SE2 as well. Now this photo is of the deck, and there's really nothing too crazy going on here either. I actually kind of like how the 7 Plus photo looks, kind of a little bit more filtered in a way, which I probably shouldn't be liking the filter. I should be liking the actual photo, but I think between both, they kind of look the same as well. Actually, this one looks a little bit more brighter. It looks like it's just kind of overexposed in a way, where the SE2 looks a little bit more in focus, which is very interesting. And also, it just looks like it's more evened out in the colors, which is something that we've seen before. So between these two, I would probably end up siding with the SE2 as well. Now this photo is of just whatever it is, and I take this photo all the time because it showcases the background with the green and the deck with the leaves and this little main thing in focus. And if you look over here, I mean, these look like kind of two separate times of the day. This looks kind of like in the evening. This looks kind of like in direct sunlight and kind of in like in midday or something, I don't know. But they were taken at the exact same times, which is interesting. Now with the 7 Plus seems to be, like I stated, a lot more over filtering going on. If I go in to zoom into this specific aspect, kind of looks like the 7 Plus is more in focus, which is interesting. If I go and zoom into this specific little whatever that is, the nail, it seems to be a little bit more blurred out on the 7 Plus, which might be good. Zoom into the corner again. I'm not really too sure which one wins here. They both look kind of the same. Colors wise, they look a little bit different. And on the back, I don't really see too many differences. So in this one, it's a kind of a tough one. I don't really know which one's the winner here. And this last photo is portrait mode. And what's interesting is from the first kind of view, it looks like the SE2 might be a little bit worse than the 7 Plus. But actually, let's go and zoom in. So I'll go and zoom into the face right now. And yeah, when you kind of zoom in, you can see how this color kind of looks a little bit more yellow and a little bit more washed out. Whereas on the 7 Plus or the SE2, it looks a lot more cooler, which I really like, and it looks not as, up in your face and not as yellow and washed out, which is very interesting. And if I go and zoom into the eye right here, let's see if there's any differences. And again, you can see some pretty massive ones. So on the 7 Plus, looks very grainy, very noisy, whereas on the SE2, they did a really good job at kind of keeping it in focus, and that's something that I really do like, and it's very unappreciative, I think. When people are taking these portrait mode photos, they're not going to realize how much more information, how much less noise is going on in these photos. So when it comes down to this, thumbs up in my books. And I did a video, and I'll go ahead and show you guys the video right now, and I really didn't notice too many differences between them. They look kind of like the exact same video. Maybe, of course, the SE2 has the advantage of shooting 4K at 60, which is insanely cool. And I think when it comes down to both videos, they both look exactly the same. I think I should have done an indoor video too, because I feel like most of the main differences came indoors. The SE2 was doing really good at brightening up specific photos and lenses, and in other senses not doing so well when it comes down to overexposing sometimes. But the 7 Plus seems to me that it kind of overexposed more times than not. And when it comes down to it, I'd probably end up saying that the 7 Plus just isn't as good of a camera as the SE2, even though it has that additional camera sensor. I feel like with the SE2 having that ability of doing 4K 60, but also having those new improvements within the A13 chip is a really huge plus for the iPhone SE2. So when it comes down to it, I'd probably end up saying the iPhone SE2 is probably the better camera between both of these for sure. So that's really pretty much it. If you guys have any other questions or anything, let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that would mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. Every single subscriber that we get really does count, so it means so much if you guys can hit that. Also, check out the other links down in the description as well. My Twitter, my Instagram, my second channel, all those links are linked down below. I'd really appreciate if you guys would check it out. More importantly, everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.